Welcome them back and support them for their efforts at keeping peace and preserving the lives of the people down there. Because my understanding is when the Americans or Canadians are down there as a group, there seems to be less shooting and less killing of the Nicaraguan people. So I think that's a great effort toward peace and toward preservation of human life.
I saw a tiny little country really struggling for survival, great concern for their people, a great rise in the efforts of human rights. And then I saw the big country to the north doing everything that we can to destroy that government. I have a real fear that what's happening there now is going to develop very quickly into another Vietnam, that our present administration feels that a military solution is the only solution to the conflicts in Central America. And I feel that whatever we can do to bring nonviolent resistance to that particular attitude is a little step in the right direction. So I think this group is just a great sign of a movement maybe to stop the violence.
Watch out, watch out, there's a rumble of war in the air. Watch out.
In July of 1979, a popular revolution begun by Augusto Sandino 40 years before toppled the dictatorship of Anastasio Somoza. In the years since the triumph, the people under the leadership of the Sandinista Party have worked to rebuild Nicaragua while suffering border attacks from United States-supported rebels, the Contras. Witness for Peace long-term and short-term volunteers have maintained a nonviolent presence of United States citizens in Nicaragua's war zones since October 1983. Rooted in the United States religious community and committed to a biblical, prayerful, and politically independent approach, Witness for Peace has lived and traveled extensively throughout conflict zones in Nicaragua. In November 1984, Witness for Peace delegates from the upstate New York area spent 2 weeks in Nicaragua, living, talking, and working with the Nicaraguan people in time of war.
Ay, Nicaragua, Nicaragüita, la flor más linda de mi querer, abonada con la bendita Nicaragüita, sangre de Dirianen. Ay, Nicaragua, sos más dulcita que la mielita de Tamagas, pero ahora que ya sos libre, Nicaragüita, yo te quiero mucho más. Pero ahora que ya sos libre, Nicaragüita, yo te quiero mucho más.
Oh, Nicaragua, precious little Nicaragua, the fairest flower of my affection, fertilized by the sacred blood of Dirianen.
After the earthquake in 1972, in which Managua was totally destroyed, and there were a large number of deaths and property being destroyed, that the entire world really responded to that natural disaster. And the campesinos and the people were aware that a great deal of aid, not only financial aid but material aid, was arriving in Nicaragua. And they saw it coming by ship and by plane, but they were not the recipients of that aid. They did not see Managua being rebuilt. And it was just a very concrete example of Somoza's lack of concern for the people.
I just can't believe it was a year ago that I absolutely did not know anything about Nicaragua or the people, and I have, since September, have this wealth of knowledge.
But I feel that every person that I have talked to about the trip ends up moving away from me, at least with some thought about this. Even my students, they gave me a round of applause when they finally found out I could go.
On the way here, if you want to know why I'm going to Nicaragua, I saw a bumper sticker that was very apropos, quite simple, but it said, if you believe, you will care, and if you care, you will act. So I believe, I care, and I'm trying to act.
Seeing the problems there from the people's viewpoint, and also working with rural peasants in Mexico, and knowing that peasant life throughout Latin America was shared pretty much in common. And knowing that the people in Nicaragua had burst through to a new possibility for them to live, and sharing the goods of rich, rich country there, and knowing how that's been thwarted and blocked by my own country. And I think what spurs me, Witness for Peace, to go with the faith community, knowing that the vision is really for all people to share this earth in brotherhood and sisterhood, is to just really be with those people who are suffering so much from our foreign policy, and to let them know there's some of us in solidarity with them, and hopefully bring them strength and hope. Keep struggling.
I realize as a group that we're committed to nonviolence, but I think there are a lot of us that still have questions about that. I know myself, I have a lot of questions and a lot of anger still inside of me.
Note for myself, right now I can say that I'm committed to nonviolence, but I don't know that if I were a Jew in the Warsaw Ghetto in World War II, that I would have been committed in the same way.
If someone came into any one of our homes with a gun and threatened to rape our daughters or kill our sons, I don't know, I haven't reached that point. I'm not sure how nonviolent I would be today.
We were to line up, however thousands of kids died and machine gun them down, we would call that violence, but because they starved, we don't call it violence. One of the reasons these kids are starving is because we in the United States are using up 45% of the world's resources, while we make up only 5% of the world's population. The process that we're involved in now is the movement of capital out of this country to foreign countries, and work jobs going overseas, and in Syracuse, the Nettleton shoe factory is closing down. And I think some jobs from Bristol Labs are going to go to the Philippines. And we're supporting the kinds of regimes we're supporting in Central America so that these factories can do that, so it does reflect.
Our government is suppressing people all over the world and keeping them down so that we can have more. And so, I don't know whether it's greed of the human heart, but our people are voting so that they can maintain that lifestyle. I don't know whether they realize what pain and suffering they cause so that we can live that way. I don't know.
And is the FSLN really working toward a powerful regime that really quashes all these things? This is what the FDN says.
Yeah, well, let's just, only one point I could make about that is what type of classic Marxist government is going to name a Jesuit priest as the Minister of Education?
What sort of freedom do people have in this amongst them? They didn't even have freedom to live, many of them. And I think we have to look a little bit at where they are coming from, where they are headed for.
Where can I escape from thy spirit? Where can I flee from thy presence? If I climb up to heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in Sheol, again I find thee. If I take my flight to the frontiers of the morning, or dwell at the limit of the western sea, even there thy hand will meet me. and thy right hand will hold me fast. Darkness is no darkness for thee, and night is luminous as day. To thee both dark and light are one.
This is Okatown. You feel the beauty of this place and its people immediately. It is almost beyond belief that our government is trained to destroy these people.
There's a people that's lived through earthquake, flood, drought, and now ongoing aggression by the U.S.-backed Contras. And the poverty and the resilience of the people in their desire to build up their schools, build up their health clinics, build up their old folks' homes, and looking for a more dignified future for everybody.
One of the more exciting things was to see the elderly vote in what they said was the first free election that Nicaragua has ever had.
Spokesman for the two major parties in opposition to the Sandinista FSLN expressed the opinion that this was a great step toward democratic elections, that any problems they had had were not of a nature that they thought the election should be called off, that in general they thought it was a great step forward.
The last month before the elections, the American ambassador visited most of the parties, and it was the opinion of the newspapers that the ambassador was trying to get the various parties to withdraw from the elections so that the United States could then state that the elections were invalid.
We personally felt that it was rather arrogant of the United States to try to tell the Nicaraguans when they had to have elections. The United States, after its revolution, didn't have elections for 13 years. Nevertheless, they set up their elections on very short notice. There's some complaint that there wasn't enough time for opposition parties to build themselves up into a reasonable opposition. But we found as official election observers that the election process itself was very honest, very fair, scrupulously done. Of course, the overwhelming majority was for the FSLN. But I think we felt that other parties are really beginning to grow and to be able to speak freely.
Sandinistas did have the advantage that any incumbent party has, say, in the United States. I mean, they had a 5-year track record. The other parties, though, had the opportunity to publicize their programs. So if somebody did not like what the Sandinistas had been doing for the last 5 years, there were 6 parties that they could see what their stated platforms were and choose amongst the 6. And a few 100,000 people, voted for the other parties.
The FSLN, which was formed in 1961, was formed as a guerrilla movement to establish an alternative political party and government from Somoza. The standard of living was very low. The illiteracy rate was very high. There was very poor health care. Half the children died before the age of 5 years. And there was no progress being made. 40% of the land in Nicaragua was owned by Somoza. All the banks were owned by Somoza. There were large corporations, coffee plantations, and the campesino was unable to raise his standard of living, to even have enough land to raise crops to eat throughout the winter. The export crops of cotton, sugar, and coffee needed very good land, and it needed large quantities of land. So the large plantations would buy up most of the property so that most of the arable land was under Somoza or large plantation owners.
Sometime, I think in the 1950s, lumber companies had come into the country, and Somoza was interested in the short-term profits, not, you know, the long-term ecology of the country. So all the hills were essentially stripped, clear-cut, and they were just stripped of their pines. Some of the knotty pine that's probably sitting in the basements in the United States came from the hills around Okata. But you can see, I mean, the hills have just been denuded, and I know now there are reforestation projects going on in the country.
The FSLN formed to address many of that type of grievance. July of 1979 was the day of triumph. By that time, there were a number of groups that had joined the FSLN, even large businesses, the hierarchy of the church, peasant organizations, unions, most of the political parties, so that it really was an insurrection of the people. And what has happened since then is known in Nicaragua as the revolutionary process. And the revolution is occurring right now. It is a process of creating a new social order. And they have made very strong steps in the direction of education, of health, of distribution of land, of providing means for everyone to at least have a minimum standard of living.
Besides being election observers, we built a community vegetable garden. We cleaned steps leading to a shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Among other things we did, we visited a community leader and visited a third grade class in a schoolroom. Here we are looking at pictures that Dill's youngest son and his third grade classmates had drawn for the Nicaraguan children. In return, the children in this classroom drew pictures for Dill to take back to Poplar Ridge, where his children attend school. The children of this world have much to teach us about communication. What we had to do in groups of 2 or 3, you couldn't drink the water in Okatao, so you would have to walk all the way down into the marketplace. And the containers were great big containers of water, and you would put that on a stick, and then 2 people would carry that on your shoulders. And so you can imagine walking maybe 15 or 20 minutes down and 15 or 20 minutes back with this water on your back.
And an official of the government in Okatao told us that one of the main projects they were working on was getting drinkable water into Okatao in order to attract industry.
We spent several days at a cooperative outside of Hikaro. This cooperative outside of Hikaro was formed by 50 families on land that had been expropriated from the Somozan holdings and given to these families. Some of the families had come from the border area near Honduras for safety purposes. Others, this had been land that they had worked previously as campesinos working for the large landholders.
They have a school up above in the big long building. It also doubles as an assembly hall. They have a coffee plant here, which they've just gotten. They're fixing it up and hope to have it in operation the week after we leave. There are 70 members in this co-op. They raise corn, beans, and coffee. They have an experimental plot here where they're planting several different kinds of beans, hoping to find out which ones grow best in this soil.
Women enter the fields at 14, and what impressed me is that most of them are barefoot. And I remember those corn stalks. I just couldn't believe it that they were walking around barefoot.
We talked to them about the women's role in the cooperative. And the men said that they felt that things were fairly equal, but that the men had learned to do everything but make tortillas. At which
The women were doing
point,
the laundry afterwards.
yes. And there was a lot of laughter, and the women kept coming closer and closer. They truly didn't join in the dialogue.
This experience felt very different from the women's cooperative in Ocotal, where women make and sell crafts, and it is completely run by the women themselves. Women also run farm cooperatives, not to mention the fact that women now have leadership roles in their own communities as well as in the government. When the workers are out in the fields, they have to be protected by the militia because they could be attacked by the Contras at any moment. We met with a 20-year-old man who had been forcibly taken by the Contras. He and his family lived on the outskirts of Hicaro, and while eating dinner with his parents one evening, the soldiers came and took him out. He later escaped. He told us that he and his family no longer sleep in their home at night, but come into the center of town and stay with families there.
Family that lived some 10 kilometers from this cooperative, and the Contras about a week ago had come through and said that they were going to burn their houses, and so the whole family picked up and moved here, and they're living in the corner of this coffee warehouse.
Initially, people weren't that enthusiastic about building bomb shelters and trenches, but as more and more towns got attacked, people started to realize the necessity. At the co-op one day we were working and you could hear mortar fire, and we were told that it was about 10 kilometers away. They were shelling the village.
What's made me so mad since getting back is to read editorials where we're saying that this scare is put on by the government to make the people united, and it's all phony. There's really nothing to be scared of when you've been there and seen what they have to be scared of. And we're scared with them.
When we got back to the village, the bus was in front of the church. We were told we were going to Corrento. They needed us right away, and we didn't have the luxury of making the decision whether to come or not. They needed us and the bus immediately. We didn't discuss it, we just did it. We did that out of great sense of trust for the Witness for Peace people in Managua that were asking us to come. We were also told they were trying to get a boat for us to go out and meet the United States frigate.
I remember going back to the schoolroom, walking away from the school with Julia, and we were both crying that we didn't know much about the boat, and we thought maybe this would be just an excuse to pack us up and ship us off, to evacuate the country. And we felt so identified with the people by this time, and just done all this thing with the school children. And Julia saying, I don't want to leave these people.
Being torn away from our families in Hicaro after spending only 2 nights at our families' homes, and after working 2 days with the Nicaraguan women in the fields was heart-wrenching. Then, to add to that pain, we had to hurriedly present the quilt, which had been made so painfully and with so much love by our communities in the United States, and then quickly get on the bus. God, it was awful. I wish we had had more time. Within an hour's period, I think almost the whole town was there, following us out, and the look of concern on the people's faces was something that I would never forget. There was a lot of hugging, and there was a lot of singing, and there was a lot of praying, and our prayer had become the prayer of the Nicaraguan people, that their faith and their spirit had flowed through us, and we had become them, and they had become us. The stars in the sky were the brightest I had ever seen stars. They looked like diamonds sparkling, and the landscape, the mountains against the sky was the most vivid and bright and brilliant picture I'd ever seen in my life. And what was going through my mind at that time was that this is indeed the most beautiful night I've ever seen, and it very well could be the last night.
I didn't want to be killed, and I was scared, but at the same time, if I was killed, I think that would be the way I would want to die. I felt the responsibility that my taxes are going to pay for what we're doing to them, and the least I could do in this instance was go down there and face the bullets for at least a short time, and to show them, that there are North Americans that are with them and disagree with our policies, and are willing to go as far as to take their dangers for at least a short time.
When we got to Ocotal, the sisters met us, and Maria said, "I want you to understand that what you've just done is the most dangerous thing you could have done. Anything you do from now on in won't be half as dangerous," and that was risk your lives for what you believe in. And then I think it really struck me. On the bus, I had absolutely no fear at all. For me, it was the power of our collective prayer being felt. After a few hours' sleep in Ocotal, we continued our journey to the port city of Corinto.
Watch out, watch out, there's a rumble of war in the air. Watch out, watch out, there's a rumble of war in the air. With a man like that, you never know where or when. He's gone, and sent in the Marines again. Some small and frightened, some well-seasoned men. Some are rightly scared to death, and some are feeling the joy at seeing blood again. I think we better watch out, watch out. There's a rumble of war in the air. Watch out, I think we better watch out. There's a rumble of war in the air, and with a man like that, you never know just where or when. He's gone, and sent in the Marines again. Today they recruited calmly in a patriotic trend, sending poor people off to war. It's cheap cannon fodder again. I think we better watch out, watch out. There's a rumble of war in the air. Watch out, I think we better watch out. There's a rumble of war in the air, and with a man like that, you never know just where or when. He's gone, and sent in the Marines again. Casualties seldom counted are the ones the guns invade. The ones who work the land, the ones who love the land, the ones who work the land, the ones who love the land, the ones who work the land, the ones who love the land where dreams of peace are made. I think we better watch out, watch out. There's a rumble of war in the air. Watch out, come on and watch out. There's a rumble of war in the air, and with a man like that, you never know just where or when. He's gone, and sent in the Marines again. I think we better watch out, 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 watch out.
The message we got was that there were 19 United States ships on one shore and 21 ships on another. We were going to Corinto to rent a fishing boat and go out and meet the United States frigate. Our intention was to try to dialogue with the frigate and tell them not to ban the people of Nicaragua and not to kill us, that they were peace-loving people and we should leave them alone. We've been in the country for enough days that we felt the great tension of the people, and all of our conversations were around the fear, the continuing feeling of fear day and night that the people carried with them. When was the invasion going to happen? When was the United States going to invade them? So when we first heard about the Corinto incident, we were as sure as the Nicaraguan people were that this was the invasion, and we were going to try to prevent it.
I kept thinking of that phrase, I guess I've heard it through friend circles, of speaking truth to power. And I just felt this is the opportunity and this is history being made right here, and the challenges just seem to be greater than the danger.
The State Department was just getting all of these telephone calls, and that was magnificent. What was great was for us to hear that the people here were acting with us at the same time. So we were absolutely elated at that. Also, the State Department had contacted the Witness for Peace office 3 different times to confirm the fact that there were citizens of the United States at the port of Corinto. There was no question in any of the Nicaraguans' minds, and I think ours too, that our presence there did make a difference and does make a difference. In our prayer circle, one of the Nicaraguan women that was praying with us she said, "Do you realize what you've done?" She said, "You've done the greatest thing another human being could do for their fellow man and woman. You have put your life on the line for your brothers and sisters." And that was a great thing to hear from the Nicaraguan people. I don't think we had realized how important our presence was to them, but we certainly did at that moment. We learned later from foreign policy analyst Richard Healy that the State Department debated whether to initiate a one-day airstrike against Corinto. Perhaps that's why the State Department wanted to know if we were there. You go into this thing feeling that you're going to help people, that you're there for that kind of a purpose, you're going to make a difference. And what you come away with is something very different. Your emotions become so strong. You see the blood, you see the holes in the walls, you hear the stories of the people. You hear about their children that have been murdered. You hear a story of a 13-year-old child that was blown to bits by a helicopter from the United States, and they had to pick her body up with a shovel. And I certainly didn't feel much like a pacifist after I heard that story. I felt a lot of anger. What that teaches me about myself is that being a pacifist is a very, very difficult thing when you're in the midst of killing and rape and murder and people that are so very, very poor. We in the United States can sit around and philosophize and talk about being pacifists. We can talk about a lot of things, but we're not living it. Then you pray in a circle with the Nicaraguan people and you feel their gentleness and you feel their love and you feel their unconditional forgiveness. Then you become gentle yourself again. When we had come back from Corinto, we were in Managua and we went to a mass, and the church was packed. Mass is referred to by the Catholics as a celebration. Well, I want to tell you that this was one of the greatest celebrations I had ever been to. People could stand up and talk about their families, those of their families that have been killed and how they were killed. They may or may not make a political statement, very much like Christ did. They were making a lot of political statements, whether we like to think of it that way or not. Everybody in the church is invited to participate in whatever way. Harvey Pinion noted that actually the service began a half hour before, because the two priests would come out and vest themselves with the people, and they would be bringing them wine out and bringing them bread out, and they would be saying hello to people and inviting people to come closer. The musicians were, of course, a very important part of the celebration. I can remember standing in line and looking at this face of a Nicaraguan woman, this beautiful woman, maybe a woman in her 60s, and I could see the pain. And she was looking at me, and I was the enemy. I was part of her pain, and I was part of the cause of her pain. And I knew that was being communicated between she and I. But by the time I got to her, she held me so tightly, and for what seemed like 10 minutes, and we just cried together. What my feeling was at that point is that she was forgiving me, and I was accepting her forgiveness. So the gifts that were exchanged are so much more than material things.
The richness of this experience was my experience of the people, and the sharing of their fears, their anxiety, but also they're involved in a process, and they're very excited about that process. The cooperation was exciting to see. They're a country going through a crisis, and they're responding, man, woman, and child. They want to solve their problems in Central America with their neighboring countries and within their country. And they would like this country to support them and negotiate with them, but not to continually militarily threaten them. And that's what the people said. And we're not talking only about the sophisticates in Managua. We're talking about people out in the fields who have knowledge of these things and an awareness that they've never had before. They feel a power of being involved in this process.
Money spent and arms sent, be they actually used by the Contras or be they used in the hands of American mercenaries or whoever, the pain is really felt by the people that were so hospitable, so kind to us. That they're the people, it's grandmother that suffers when she hears her son doesn't come back from the front. It's her grandchildren that are killed if the attack comes to the town. And I was so fully aware that these are the people that have suffered and will continue to suffer.
It's hard to feel that my government is trying to destroy what the Nicaraguans are building.
They differentiate always between the American people and the government of the United States. What I brought back with me was the kind of gentle love that I had always read about, and I'd heard it sung about in songs and lamented in poems, and never had really felt it. But that is the kind of gifts that you receive from the Nicaraguan people, that unconditional love and forgiveness.
I've been to a lot of demonstrations in the United States where we do a lot of the same kinds of things, vigils and so forth, that we did in Nicaragua. And when I've done them here, I've felt they had a certain self-conscious or staged quality to them. And in Nicaragua, we were doing a lot of the same kinds of things, but I really got to the feeling there that they were, I felt that they were real. I wasn't embarrassed to do, hugging people and wish them peace, because it really meant something there.
We lived with families, we spoke with them, we shared their meals, we prayed with them, we sang with them, we worked in the fields alongside of them, really living their life with them for 3 or 4 days. It was very heartwarming. And from them we learned the real message of Christian forgiveness and Christian hope, which we bring home and which we want to give to all of you.
Ay, Nicaragua, Nicaragüita, la flor más linda de mi querer, abonada con la bendita Nicaragüita, sangre de Dirianien. Ay, Nicaragua, sos más dulcita que la mielita de Tamagas. Pero ahora que ya sos libre, Nicaragüita, yo te quiero